Everybody, thanks for joining me on a Monday morning coffee video. And what I wanted to talk about real quickly is Photoshop's new generative AI capabilities. There's been a lot of talk about it, and everybody's saying, oh, it's the end of photographers and the end of photography. And my experiences with it so far haven't been all that great. They can be kind of fun for certain kind of things, but on the other hand, it's got a lot of limitations. And yes, it's early days, and I'm sure it's going to get better and better, but it is far from perfect, although it has some interesting uses. So the guys at PhotoPro asked me to take some shots of their new tripod, the Sherpa Summit, being used out in the real world. And this is a photograph of me using the tripod out in Acadia National Park. Now, let's say I wanted to change the background for this. Will generative AI allow me to do this in Photoshop? Well, you see, when I have the background selected, there's an option called Select Subject. So let's see how good a job it does, because there's a lot of details in here. So we choose Select Subject, and it actually doesn't do that great a job. Take a look. Let's zoom in a bit. Look at the camera for one. It's missing a bunch of the camera. That's not good. And it's missing a bunch of the tripod legs, and it missed part of my shoe, and it picked up some shadows. So what this means is you're going to have to go in with the tools and do a better job of it. And what I ended up doing was using a combination of the polygonal lasso and the standard lasso to go in and add and subtract for this. So just if you're not familiar with these tools, with the regular lasso, which is nice for curvy kind of things, I can zoom in. If I want to subtract or add, you can use the Alt and the Shift keys. So Alt to subtract. So if I hold down the Alt key, notice that the lasso gets a minus around it. I can say, well, I don't want this stuff down in here. Get rid of that. And again, I hold down the Alt key, it turns to a minus, and I'll get rid of the shadow there. And then if I hold down the Shift key, I can add the piece of shoe that is missing. So I can draw around there. So any place I've got straight areas that were a fail, like here, I would use the polygonal tool. So I click up here on the lasso tool, choose polygonal. Now I need to add to this, so I hold down the Shift key and I get a shift. So when I need to get something straight, I can click on one spot. I'm going to hold down the Shift key to turn it to a plus, and I need to get the rest of this leg selection here. And if I just go around and double click, you can see it picks that up. But you can see it's a little bit of a tedious process. It does not do a phenomenal job of it. So what I did was I spent the time going through all these pieces and adding, subtracting, and I ended up saving that selection. So if I just come up, I just deselect that, go to Select, Load Selection, and I called it background, and okay, there it is. So that was me going in manually and selecting and deselecting all the pieces. That didn't work anymore. So after doing that, I just inverted it, which is just under Select, Inverse. So it's Command Shift I. After I had my selection, I then saved it, because it's important to do, because you want to be able to come back to these things. So if you go to Select Save Selection, it will then save it, give it a name, and then you can get back to it at any time. That's not what we're here for. We're here to see how Generative Fill does. So let's click down on this Generative Fill, and what do I want to do? Let's say I want a featureless plane extending off to infinity. And let's hit enter and see what Photoshop's generative AI can do. Now, when it is done, it does give you several different possibilities. It generates 3 different ones that you can then take a look through. Okay, so there's one. Down here, you've got the 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, that one's kind of weird. 3. And that one's kind of interesting. Actually, I could use that, but that one's terrible. Okay, but if you take a look, there are some major fails here. Look what it did to the legs. The legs are missing. That's bad. I don't know what this thing is sticking out of the back of the camera. It does generate a shadow, so that's pretty cool, but not for the legs on that one. That one's just a complete fail. This one it added another leg to the tripod. My tripod now has 4 legs. In fact, it has a half a leg here. So it can do some cool stuff, but understand that some of this stuff is still got a long way to go. And it's interesting. So for example, what I did with one image is my daughter visited over the weekend, and we stopped in a shop that had, what is your totem animal? And it turned out that her totem animal was a hedgehog and a goat. But I couldn't generate an image of a hedgehog and a goat at the same time. So what I ended up doing was letting the software generate. This is the image that Midjourney generated, this background with the hedgehog having a cup of tea and some kind of, I don't know what that is. I forget what we asked it to do. But it didn't have horns, so I did have the software generate horns. And if you take a look, well, that one was a fail. It got kind of weird. That one's kind of interesting. We asked for curving ram horns, and that one was a little more gentle. So for stuff like that, it does a great job. But for doing real stuff, like this shot here, you can see it's pretty much a failure. I'd be better off just generating a background and then compositing me in. So for example, here is the result of me manually going in and making the selection. I could just put any background in here. Like say for example, if I come back to my original and I wanted to see me wearing a hat. So I could select, I'll just select here and ask it to generate a top hat. Let's see what it does if it can put a top hat on the top of my head. Let's see. And let's move this out of the way. It's kind of weird, but it's kind of funny at the same time. I don't typically wear a top hat when I'm out photographing. Let's see what else it came out with. I don't know what the heck that is. And yeah, that's pretty weird too. The first one's the best, but again, if you want to have some fun, you can do some fun stuff like this. If you're doing product photography and you have some kind of basic product you want to put in some scene, it works great for that. But when you have complicated scenes where you really want to change something, I just wanted to show you with a little bit of fun, and we'll explore this more in the future, that generative AI, it's here. Face it, it does some cool stuff, but it still is in its infancy, and I'll be curious to see where it goes. So by the way, after I was done adding the top hat, I thought, well, what's a top hat without having a cape if you're going to be out formal doing your photography? So I asked Adobe's Photoshop's generative AI to give me a cape as well, and this is what I got. So is it useful? I don't know. It's certainly fun, and give it a try. It's fun to play with, and who knows what you're going to come up with. So just a little fun and introduction to some of the capabilities of Photoshop's new generative AI. It will be interesting to watch, but don't worry about it. Regular photography is still going to be here to stay for a long time. So thanks for joining me. Have yourself a great week, and I'll be back on Friday with Photo Friday. Bye-bye.